Hi, welcome to the Divine Insight Show. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to be here with you this week. And this week it's just you and me. I'm pretty excited about talking about intuitive healing, which is the topic of today's show. And over the years that I've been doing this show, whether that's up at KKNW in the Seattle area where I was, doing a live radio show, or since moving to LA, going straight to podcast and doing the YouTube channel, obviously I've talked to a lot of folks and try to bring on folks who are on the cutting edge of thought in the industry of wellness, healing. And I don't really talk a lot about the work that I do and the clients that I've worked with, or the types of modalities that I use when I work with clients, or the different programs that I use. So I thought it would be kind of cool to kind of dive into that for myself and talk to you and share with you about my own journey. For those of you who are newer to the show, might not know the modalities that I use in my work with people, don't necessarily even know that I do distance healing work or distance mentoring. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. And I wanted to kind of talk about it from this idea of intuitive healing. What does that mean when we talk about intuitive healing? We understand the traditional sort of doctor, this thing hurts and I need to get some physical pain reduction or treatment for whatever is going on physically. But we don't necessarily, and that's sort of a binary systemic approach of like saying, this hurts, cut it out, make it stop, without looking at the energetic reasons why this experience might have become apparent in our life, if it wasn't like, say, for even an accident that we might have had. Obviously, we trip on some stairs going up and we hit our arm, we're going to say, well, it was just an accident. But some other things, and a lot of things, and I would say, frankly, most things that we experience in our physical body are the result of dis-ease or energy movement that is being disrupted in some way. And so when I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about how I got really kind of started in this energy medicine world, because I know there are a lot of people out there that basically have been quote unquote intuitive, or had extrasensory perception from an early age or all their life, and knew it, and have been working in the industry for their entire life. For me, that wasn't the case. Although I would tell you now that I might have had capacities that I didn't understand or didn't have a language for growing up, but it wasn't something that I recognized within myself until I was an adult, not till the age of 33, the right power number 33. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about the healing modalities that I use in the work that I do, because if it resonates with you and you feel like there might be something that you could benefit from working with me, then I want to just share with you all the different ways in which I approach my work and all the ways in which I could help you, and talk about some of the clients that I've had over the years, just over a decade, about 12 years that I've been doing this work, and talk about kind of the incredible healing that's come out of even one session for folks. So if you're interested in doing that, obviously you can reach out and send me an email if it's something that you're going through. But I just want to kind of give you this kind of storyline of the things that I've been doing over the years, because I think that would be helpful so you know a little bit more about me. I want to acknowledge that it's a little bit uncomfortable for me to do that. This is a new space for me. It's easier for me to sort of promote other people, which is what I've been doing for most of my career. I don't do a lot of self-promotion. It makes me uncomfortable. I know it's a part of the business. And so this show is, in essence, kind of a way for me to step into that a bit more. And it is something that, I pulled a card for myself this morning, and it was the fifth chakra, which is a wonderful reminder of speaking your truth. Truth in your life, when you speak it authentically, comes into your life as personal empowerment. And so, as I always talk about several times on this show, talking about the shadow or the things that we might feel vulnerability around, if we come to our life with authenticity and a true desire to to share the things that we want to share, then we'll be empowered by doing that, particularly when we are all aligned with our divine plan in the process. And I'll talk a little bit more about that if I don't forget to do that later on in the show. But really, my path has become one in which I recognized that I was really getting in my own way quite frequently in my life, and it was showing up in the way of addiction cycles, and I've talked about that just a couple of weeks ago. But when I got sober for the first time and I was really committed to that sobriety, I recognized a gap that I had in my spirituality, that before that time that I got sober, I would have called myself an atheist. And not to say there's anything wrong with whatever your belief systems are. If you happen to be atheist, that's wonderful for you. My point about my story is that didn't work for me. I was not able to live my best life with that mindset around my connection with source energies and spirituality. So I needed to recognize that one of the blocks that I had was in my own belief system around who I was and my connection to the world around me, which energetically is the seventh chakra, which comes from the top of our head. Spirituality, when we talk about it in sort of the language of the intuition, would be individuation. What is my individual path and belief system around my relationship with others in the world? If I have a healthy worldview and a healthy belief system around my connection with others, then I'm not I'm not isolating myself from others. I don't otherize everyone else. I don't believe the world is against me. I seek connections with people rather than differences. And in general, I'm happy in this sense. So I wasn't happy for most of my adult life, but thought I was, and was sort of pretending to or trying to, but not necessarily even having an awareness of what my problem really was. And that's kind of the nature of addiction. Again, I talked about it a couple of weeks ago. But this idea of being in denial about what you're experiencing, I think, is an important thing to acknowledge. And personally, for me, it changed my life when I started to do that intentionally, purposefully, and authentically. So I was sober for a couple of years. Well, was it a couple of years? Maybe a little over a year. I can't remember exactly the timeline, but I was introduced to this woman who was teaching classes on energy medicine. And it was part of this time of me kind of feeling like something was missing in my life. And I became very attracted, to use the law of attraction terminology. I was attracted to her work, and what she did, and I just felt like I wanted to learn more from her. And so I took this class, this Reiki class. And Reiki is a hands-on healing modality. And essentially, the Reiki is, the meaning is universal life force energy coming in through the body and then through me as a facilitator for healing of the people that I work with. And there are 3 levels of attunement to Reiki, the first being healing on the physical realm. Now, there are definitely, if you were to search Reiki on the internet, you'll find several different ideas around the origins. But how I learned Reiki was from someone who learned from someone, up this lineage to the originator of one Reiki line, I'll call it, the Usui method, or Usui, U-S-U-I, out of Japan in the 1800s. And so I was attuned to the first, second, and third level of healing, the first being the physical, the second being the mental, emotional, and distance, and the third being the spiritual or the master level of attunement. And so during this class, you're attuned, or that essentially a symbol is placed into your system, and you are aligned with your highest capacity for healing in the physical realm at the first level. Second level, mental, emotional again, and third, spiritual. So I was in this class getting the instruction to use your intuition. I'll say quotes. I didn't know what that meant. I was like, okay, use your intuition. Whatever that means, I'll do it. I tend to kind of jump into things, even if I'm not always comfortable. But I did it. And while I had my hands on somebody's shoulders, I could see his pancreas in my mind. And I knew what the pancreas was. And I knew what it did in that moment, even though, I at the same time, my consciousness was like, I don't know this information. I don't know that, but I did in that moment, and I knew it was correct. And he confirmed it by saying he had, adult onset diabetes. And when I realized that I had this clairvoyant image, I could see his pancreas in my mind. It was red, it was inflamed, it felt dangerous, something felt off. I did the hand symbol on it and it turned yellow. So to me, my own perception gave me the information that I knew in that moment was most helpful for that person. And I could then say, oh, I can actually see into someone's physical body, which I thought was profound, amazing, incredible, and super fun. And I couldn't wait to do it again. And so that was the first time I had ever tried to intentionally, with my consciousness, open up my mind and ask, what is in the highest good for this person that I'm working with? What is the most important and relevant information in their life? And I also ask, please show me this information in a way that I can easily understand. Now, when I do that, I then have the trust and faith that I will be shown whatever it is I need to see in that moment or feel or hear. I was also having early on in my career empathic experiences with clients wherein I would actually feel something in their body that was expressing itself to me so that I could understand what they were feeling. And every time I felt something in my body while working with a client, they actually felt that in their body and confirmed that that was something they were experiencing, pain, discomfort. And that's been true to this day, which has been a part of my practice. And even over the phone, when I started to do the radio show, first off, when I called it the Create the Life You Want show, which is still on iTunes. There's an album in iTunes and Spotify, I believe, of my first radio show, which was an hour-long show called Create the Life You Want. There's a whole other story about how I got involved in doing that show. But what I do now is called Divine Insight. It's a half-hour show. But that was back in 2014 when I started to do that. And even from the second radio show that I did, and when I work on clients at a distance, I recognized that I could perceive what was going on in their energy system. When they asked me a question, I had the capacity to tune in to the energetic frequency of that question and channel information relevant to that question for them. Whether or not that was a question that they really needed to ask, I would still hear whether or not that was relevant. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of times when people will go to someone like me with some preconceived notion about what it is that they want to experience or what it is that they're, quote, looking for. What I often find is that I don't ask people to share much with me before I work with them so that when I get information, they can verify that what I'm getting is accurate for them, because that's an important part of the process. I don't want to be in any way thwarted or have any sort of preconceived notions with folks. And that stuff resides in our brain. So if somebody thinks they know what's going on in their body and they project that out, they could be wrong. Although, I could tell you that we project a lot of stuff into our bodies. So if we have physical pain, I'm not saying that that's wrong, but that sometimes people can have perceptions about why it's there or what the reasons are for, that particular experience. And so when I started to do this back in 2007, I was grabbing people, whoever I could find, and bringing them onto my table. And I was still working full-time for the city, which I continued to do for another many, many years. And every time I would have someone on the table, I would get information that was relevant to their lives or the people that they knew. And it started with this sort of empathy, and I realized I could feel their bodies, as I mentioned. But I also got information from loved ones who had either passed on to the other side or who were about to pass on to the other side. And it was confusing to me because at first I thought, well, I must be a medium because I can communicate with loved ones who would show up during a session and sometimes even before to disrupt my meditations, but really to get my attention. And I took it personally when they were interrupting my meditations. But um, I would basically see them how they appeared, or what they were showing to me was usually the way in which they died, because they wanted to share something about themselves that would resonate with the person that I was working with. They would often show me aspects of their personality, or one even would show me before they died, so that I could share that information with the client so that they could go and visit their mother in that case, before they died. And it was really important for them to do that. So that information came through first. And so, what I realized is that I had this intuition, and this intuition is really this broad term used to describe the unique ways in which we can communicate with the universe. And how it works physically in the body is we have a third eye, which is in the head. It is like literally the front of the third eye is, if you're listening, it's between the eyebrows and about an inch above them in the center of the forehead. Now that's the front of the chakra. The back of the chakra is actually at your occipital ridge. And if you imagine the entire chakra length normally is about 4 inches, and it's a cone coming from each side at about 2 inches around, down to a point at the center of your head where the spine meets, and then it goes out through the front, or through the pineal gland, actually. And so they meet in the center, and the center of your head is where this energy exchange happens, the non-physical realm of energy, sort of like the non-matter. So it's still energy, but it's just not physical, is coming into the body. And then our brain, this is where our brain is, tries to understand it, interpret it, and act on it. That's what our brain likes to do. What's going on in the world, and how do I navigate the day? But when it comes to our intuition, the brain is a little bit ill-equipped to do that, because it's something that relates to, how to respond to an emotion. And the brain's like, no, it's not linear. I don't know how to do that. I'm just going to react from all these other mechanisms in play when we do that. But my point is, intuition at its best is the capacity to see, feel, hear, know, or understand the metaphysical world around me, so that I can operate myself in a way that's healthier, make decisions that are more empowering, navigate the world using my emotional response system, my emotional guidance system, using my body for the way in which it was designed. And so how we do that is to learn what ways in which we can most easily communicate with the universe around us. So there are ways in which all of us have some innate capacity or innate gift to connect with, understand, communicate with, and interact with the world around us. And we often do it with our personality, our ego, our mind, our brain, but not always with our sort of higher level emotional intelligence and our higher self, and with grace, compassion, love, and understanding of not just what's happening in this moment, but how does that event relate from a broader perspective on my life as a whole, or lifetimes, come to find out. So over time, as I worked with more clients, I was essentially being trained. My third eye, which is a muscle like any other, well, maybe not like all of them, but it's certainly a muscle. It requires work to get stronger. So I didn't initially, like day one, communicate with spirits. I didn't day one recognize past life traumas or even see them. But over time and practice and more clients, I just developed the trust to know that what I was seeing was not being made up in my head, and I was able to perceive it in a way that was easy for the client to understand. And I want to talk just briefly about the different types of information that came up, because if any of this resonates with you, then it would be wonderful to be able to work with you specifically on that capacity that you have, or maybe some attraction that you have. If something that I say really resonates with you strongly, then I would encourage you to pursue that further. And I'd love to work with you to develop that. One of them, like I had just said, so there's sort of this medical intuition thing, this idea that through my intuition and my ability to connect with people energetically, I can see, feel, hear, and understand the physical body. So whatever you're experiencing, if there are things going on in your physical body that you are having a difficult time in kind of getting an understanding of what's going on, then having a half-hour session with me might be a helpful way to sort of get to the energetic predisposition of what's going on, or if there's an emotion, mental, or spiritual aspect to this physical issue, then it might be really helpful to do that. If you have a loved one that you are interested in communicating with who's on the other side, then I can work with you to connect with that person. And what I tell you about this is it's important to manage expectations around working with somebody like me. I do know some colleagues, and I won't speak for who they are, but what I say is this: I will open the door, but I won't necessarily have much control over who comes through it. I can open the request up and say, hey, I want to talk to Bob, I want to talk to Sharon, but they may not be the most important persons to come through. That doesn't mean that I won't be able to do it, but I might have to get through another person first. What I think about is if the other side, which is like the other side, it's drowned in love, it's like a love vibrational frequency and love dimension, sees someone like me with this door open, you know, the sign on the other side says open for business, I can communicate with you, spirit being, so come to me and I will share your wisdom with people. They will line up. And if you have a desire to communicate with a spirit on the other side, then you could certainly reach out to me, schedule a session, and then we could communicate with that person. But what I'm saying that is, I had a session with a client who, she didn't necessarily have a belief or a desire or an expectation to communicate with someone on the other side. But what happened was, when I opened the door, I saw someone in that moment of a session with her that was somebody who had actually passed on to the other side, who had traumatized her as a child. And she was very upset about this person showing up in a session and basically in disbelief around, well, that's not fair, that's not right. In fact, very upset, saying, I don't want to talk to him. What the hell is he doing here? I want to, somebody who's like good for me or that helpful. But what I recognized in that moment, which was very true for her, was that there was still some wounds that needed to be released first. And one of them was apology and forgiveness. So he came through to apologize. Whether or not she was able to accept it, actually she was, but that was a whole different issue. Is that I said, he's actually here because this is how you can connect with the other side in a way, because of this distrust that you had for obvious reasons and very good reasons in him. That wound is still not healed. Therefore, it would be more difficult for you, or her in this case, to develop trusting relationships as long as this wound is still hurting, right? So we worked through that, and this person went away after that, this person on the other side, and then someone else came through. But my point is, we might believe that we want to talk to this person, but there might be somebody else in the spirit realm, either and specifically somebody who's a loved one on the other side who has something important to share, but also a spirit guide or guides, those beings who are here to help us, who have decided with our request before we were born to be our spiritual cheerleaders, to be there for us whenever we ask, to help us at times in our need when we ask. But for those of us who are developing a conscious relationship with the world around us and a more spiritual relationship with the world around us, we have in fact requested beings to help us. And oftentimes those beings will come up during a session. And for all the reasons you might just believe just by hearing it, right, is that they want us to know that they're available. They want us to listen as much as we can to wisdom that is available for us. They want us to try to avoid getting in our own way to the extent that we do that, which is a common thing that a lot of us do. And so when I was working with people, I would start to see beings who felt like a guide or guides of some kind. Now, they vary given the different people that I've worked with. Some have one primary, some have several. There's also been oftentimes when animal beings, animal spirits, animal wisdom will come through, which I thought was quite unusual. And in fact, I kind of rejected the first animal that came through. I was getting a clear audient, which is clear hearing, which is kind of similar to if you get a song stuck in your head and you can't get rid of it. So a clear audient sound is much like that. So I had this song, if you will, this repeating phrase in my head, beaver, 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 beaver. And I was just like, oh my God, no, I want something better than that. I mean, come on, spirit, you can do better than that. Give me something more meaningful or more powerful, which is me just being kind of silly, right? When I just said, I want the most important, powerful information for somebody and I reject what comes through, it's sort of ironic, right? But I also thought it was too unusual. However, when I shared the wisdom of what this animal had for this person that I was working with, at first I thought, well, it's just going to get up and leave and not want to come back. But instead, the person said, wow, that is absolutely so true for me. Not only that, but I actually have a beaver stuffed animal on my bed. And this person at the time was in his 60s. And I was just, at that point, I really kind of developed much more of my absolute trust and just saying, okay, I get it. This was the first animal that I had seen. So it was like, I don't know, like, what is that? Why am I seeing that? And so that's our intuition. The universe communicates to us often in metaphors, but we don't understand it and we often reject it because it doesn't make linear or logical sense. And when we open ourselves up to the desire to understand and communicate with the universe more consciously, then we need to adjust our belief systems about how that's going to be for us, what that means for us. What are we going to be allowing to communicate in if we only think that the universe is going to communicate to us in a very specific way and only that way? So when you're looking at opening up your intuition or understanding your intuition more or developing your intuition more, it's important to recognize the belief systems that you have about that. And because I didn't really have many, and I got super excited in the beginning, I also just sort of was like, okay, kid in a candy store energetically, I would be like, what else is out there? And I continued to get more and more clients where interesting things would come up. So I also mentored under a woman, under that same woman. She invited me to mentor under her for a couple of years. And so I did. And so I learned other techniques from her and others from Spirit that we'll talk about. I started to see as well past life traumas that were holding people back in this life as it relates to their desire to increase their capacity for conscious connection to the world around them, to increase their gifts, whether that be gifts of intuition, mediumship, clairvoyance, or just their intuition, where they're like, I want to trust myself more, but for some reason I'm blocked. I can't seem to make decisions or can't seem to be sure when I want to make a decision about what the right decision is. So I keep ending up in the same place wondering why. And so oftentimes, as I described earlier, how intuition comes into the back of the head, it's like the intuition energy wants to come in, but there's something keeping it from our conscious understanding. And when I started to work with people, particularly on the back of their heads, I would start to see, feel, hear, know, and experience the past life trauma that created a belief system that is keeping them from accessing their intuition in this life. And so the way that I think about it and the way that we understand from science is that when we develop emotional belief systems, those belief systems are stronger than an intellectual belief system. So meaning when we have powerful events growing up that relate to our relationship with our parents, if that's not healthy, then as an adult, we might have a difficult time trusting other people, for example, or feeling like we have value. I think that's a good one that I've seen often. And if parents are holding children back from being their whole and complete self, which I've seen lots of times. But my point is, if we've had a trauma that caused our death or that we believe caused our death, or that did, and as we die, something resonates strongly in our belief system around the cause, it makes perfect sense that a defense mechanism would show up in our consciousness that says, I'm not doing that again. I was decapitated. I was stabbed to death. I was burned alive. I was buried alive. I was drowned. I was stoned to death. All of these ways in which I've seen people die tragically in past lives related to their conscious connection with their spiritual selves, their higher self, their ability to see, hear, feel, and communicate with the universe around them. And this related in this life to a rejection of that, not because they had any desire to reject it, but because it was a defense mechanism. There was fear around it and they didn't recognize it. So I work with people energetically to go back and actually heal that trauma and collect that soul part if it was disconnected from the collective at the time of death for whatever reason. You know, again, when we think about scientifically, the consciousness, you know, epigenetics that we've learned about scientifically means our cells have a consciousness. So when we have a thought, our body responds consciously, you know, energetically. So if we have a thought that says, I will never do this again, ever, we're so binary and final, that is true. And polar, I don't know that word, such polar people, this or that, black or white, there we go, binary, better word. So like never again will I ever use my intuition because I was what's the term? Oh, the word isn't coming to me. Another one. So if I was, oh, I can't even think of it. It's so funny. But anyway, so if the ways in which, if it backfired, if my use of intuition, my perception caused my death and it backfired, meaning I was empowered, but something happened and somebody betrayed me and, you know, and I don't want to do that again, then in this life, I might have an unconscious belief system playing out that says, I can't access my intuition. If I have power, it's just going to be misused. Someone else is going to try to take it from me or misuse it, or even I might accidentally harm someone because it's something happened in the past. So these things I've seen hundreds and hundreds of times. And when I work with someone to do what I call a soul retrieval, that's where we understand the story around what happened in that lifetime, and then we collect that soul part and integrate it back into the physical body. Oftentimes, people can trust themselves more. They feel like their intuition is stronger, and they just feel better. They feel like they feel more powerful, which makes sense, right? If we've lost aspects of ourselves somehow, we want to be healed. Now, when I talk about, you know, going to hell, it's kind of funny because I think hell is what we make of it. Hell is a belief system that many people have. And so if we believe in hell and we believe we're going to go there at our death, that's exactly what's going to happen. And that's what I mean by disconnecting from source, because if you go to hell, this part of that consciousness, the little piece of your soul that's inhabiting this body in this life or that body in that life, when we've had hundreds of lives, is disconnected. And in order to be whole, we need all of ourselves complete. And that piece of our soul needs to return to the collective where it belongs. And so that's a lot of what I do with folks, as well as help empower them to be their full and complete selves through doing these soul retrievals and or past life readings where I can help people understand it. And oftentimes, in fact, nearly every time I do a reading on somebody that a past life issue will come up, it almost verbatim will parallel what they've been experiencing in this life that they're trying to heal from. And it's remarkable, even, you know, of course, strangers who I've never met before. So I wouldn't have told you 15 years ago that I believed in past lives, but over time, through my own practice, you know, I'm a bit of an empiricist. I believe that it is true. Our consciousness can never die. It can't. It's always existing. And I believe that we return to life, to earth, in order to learn and grow experientially as a soul for all the reasons in which we wanted to learn lessons to evolve, to become more, to be better, whatever that is for us, learning how to unconditionally love, how to love myself, how to accept love into my life. These are the lessons many of us are learning to live in this one, how to have healthy relationships that are vibrant, and how to build community, how to now fix what we have harmed in the world. So many ways in which the religions that we've practiced over the centuries that we have kept us down, held us back. We're coming into a reckoning of sorts with that, wherein we were all called upon to recognize the ways in which there are so many more ways to communicate with our spirituality than through one dogmatic system designed to enslave us. And I know that's a pretty strong terminology to use, but it's the only one that I could based on the hundreds of times in which I've seen this in people's bodies, where, and also I want to be clear that if you have a belief system that involves a religion, then that's wonderful. I am very supportive of anyone in a religion. So be it. Here's the caveat. If it works for you, if everything that religion does for you is healthy, makes you happy and joyous and free, because that's the way we're designed. So if you, however, feel anxious, obligatory, responsible, and or guilty for things in your life, and it's a bit of a cop out to go into church once a week and ask for forgiveness and then turn around and do whatever it is that we did that we are guilty about in our mind caused us to feel like we need forgiveness in the first place. So our spirituality, I think of it this way. Religion is taking on somebody else's belief around our relationship with God, whatever God is for us. Spirituality is developing our own. And so my goal is to help people identify the spirituality that works best for them, whether or not that coincides with some dogmatic religion. And I just sort of happen to see all the ways in which the religions over the centuries have murdered people for being heretics or not following God's law, whatever that meant at the time, which has harmed more people than it has helped. And so I believe that we are all on a path to God, whatever that means for us, God consciousness, our higher selves. We are evolving, as I've talked with another guest on the show, Sandra Biskin, many months ago. We are evolving to Homo spiritus out of Homo sapiens. So what that means for all of us is that we're developing a higher emotional intelligence. We are developing more spirituality at the conscious level and understanding what that means for us, and learning how to live happier and more abundant, spiritually centered lives. And so that has been a strong part of my work as well. And because I can work remotely, like I said, over the radio when I had callers on the show, or through individual sessions that people book with me, people have shared that oftentimes they can actually feel my energy in the room with them at the time. In fact, I've had a couple of clients while I'm on the phone, doing a session with them, they'll actually turn around if I'm doing something with them, because they feel like I'm there with them, which is kind of cool. But if we understand the science around that, we can understand that information is non-local. My consciousness is in my body, but my energy of the consciousness can expand beyond the physical space of where I am right now. And if I think of somebody, I can actually connect, remote view in to see what they're doing and how they're doing, in particular check in to what's going on with them energetically, and then anyone that they are associated with energetically, I can connect with as well. However, I also want to mention that I am a strong believer in having spiritual integrity in my work. I don't read people who haven't asked me to do a reading. I don't do this sort of casually. I think it's important that we maintain confidentiality with respect to the work that we do, because it's such an intimate process. In order for me to do what I do well, I need to love you unconditionally at a spiritual level. I can't project or have any judgments over who you are or who you have ever been in your lifetimes. Otherwise, I wouldn't see what it is that I need to see. And so when I approach my practice, it's all about compassion and love and creating a safe environment for you so that you can be true to yourself and authentic. Because if we're coming in with blocks, then there's no point in wasting time or money to work with anybody. If, for example, you might be in denial about something, I will see what I need to see. It's not, and I know this can sound intimidating, only because I hear other people tell me that, like friends of mine that have said, I'm never getting on YouTube. And I jokingly say, well, you don't have to. I could do it right now, but I won't. But that's more of a joke than anything, because I absolutely wouldn't do that. I don't run around the grocery store reading people. And in fact, just yesterday, I heard someone share with me that there was a time when they were in this like metaphysical bookstore, and someone else went there and basically confronted her to say, I have to tell you something. There's something I'm supposed to tell you. I'm supposed to do this. Now, I think that's very dangerous. I think that's dangerous for a couple of ways. I think one, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because I have the capacity to communicate with energy and see things that are going on in the world, I don't have permission. I don't have spiritual consent. I don't have, and I use that term because I think it's important. I don't have your consent. I need your consent. And if somebody comes to me and starts talking to me about my stuff, I immediately, I try to walk around with walls on so I don't get interfered with in my day anyway, but because I'm generally an open person. And however, if somebody starts, tuning into me without my permission or consent, I'm like, you know what? I'm not paying for this. I don't want you to do that unless it's something where I can feel like, hey, we're doing an energetic trade of some kind. I believe in the trade situation where energy exchange. And I just don't want somebody essentially assaulting me with spiritual information that they have no business at in the first place. And we do that. We can do that a lot, even in the spiritual community, which seems ironic, but it's very true that there are a lot of colleagues that I have that will get involved in like spiritual gossip. And I'm very careful around that because it's sort of like, water cooler talk at work, and I did HR for 15 years at the city of Seattle. I'm an attorney. I did HR investigations and communication in the workplace, and how that, it's interesting. I had kind of a foot in both worlds. I still do HR consulting occasionally, but I'm focusing more on my healing work now. But my point is, it can be really beguiling to get involved in like these really cool conversations about metaphysical stuff. But I also think it's important to have integrity around how we do that, or when we do that, and also why we do that. So whenever I sort of share information about a client, I will do so anonymously unless I have their specific permission and consent, which I often don't ask for unless I'm like recording something that I'm going to be using for promotional purposes. And so that's kind of an important thing about my practice that I think is good now, and important to consider. See if there's anything else. From an intuitive standpoint, I work with people who, on a one-on-one basis, in what I call mentoring or coaching. It's not just that maybe they want to develop their own practice. Maybe they're a Reiki practitioner and they want to expand the work that they do, or they want mentoring or coaching about how to create whatever it is that they want to create in their working world. And so I help folks at that level develop their intuition. Maybe it's 1, 2, 3 sessions or whatever, something that is helpful for them. I usually don't tell people, in fact, I'm often cautious against telling people how many sessions they need, because kind of the first step in intuition is by telling the client, well, you have full control over your life, including when you might see me next. If we do a healing session, distance or in person, then generally I tell people, you don't need another Reiki or healing session for another 3 weeks. But if you're interested in more, if you have an acute issue, acute pain, or really are going through a really tough time, then yeah, perhaps we want to have a few sessions closer in time than that, but I completely leave it up to the client, always. But what I do say is your intuition is also, if you're trying to tap into it, then use your intuition to tell you when it's helpful to have a next session with me. Unless I'm pursuing or doing a formal mentoring program, which I also do. on occasion, but right now I do mentoring on a one-on-one basis. One other healing modality that I don't talk about much, but what I do is something that came through to me in 2013. In 2013, there was, actually could have been 2012, I'm trying to think about it, one of those 2 years. So several of the people that I mentored with in the second year program, we would get together every quarter and work on each other over a weekend. So it was about 10, I think 11 of us total who would get together and just over the weekend, lay of hands, like 7, 8 people working on, even 9 on one person. So the healing aspect was quite a bit bigger than just having one person, even though one person is quite powerful. During that time when I was on the couch getting work done on me, I saw a phoenix fly through the room. And part of me was quite surprised at seeing a phoenix fly into the room and was like, what's that? That's really unusual. But the other part of me that now had communicated with some animals at times, understanding the perfect way in which the universe is coming through, understood that there must be some spiritual reason, some important reason. But my curiosity was, why is it here? And then it flew out of my vision and then flew into my body. It flew into my back. And I could feel this transformation happen while I was on the couch. I began to feel the energy exchange between this etheric spirit and myself. And slowly I felt this sound come up from my belly, up through my voice. And I began toning at a different frequency, a shifted tone at that time. And I was quite surprised at that on the couch, because part of me was like, I don't want to scream essentially on this couch in front of all my friends and colleagues. It's quite weird. But I knew I had to, because it was the final moment of that attunement. So much like the story of Reiki and Dr. Usui, who was attuned to do the Reiki symbols, I was attuned in that moment to provide this healing, which I call Phoenix Fire, because I don't really know how else to call it. I do know that I've since learned that it was used in Egypt 1900 BC. And it's using the frequency of the sun to basically channel healing energy through me. And I use the sound to reinforce the soul and to help detach toxic cords, relationship cords from this life or past lives that are still connected to the etheric body. And then it reinforces the soul and protects the soul from attack or lower vibrational beings, entities, or people who might be attracted to someone's light. And it also helps to integrate soul parts when I do soul retrievals. And it really helps with the depossession work that I do when we have attachments. It's not sort of, I haven't seen any people with sort of the more occultish, serious, very, very serious possessions, which include the personality disorders significantly. But what I have experienced with people is the people that sometimes aren't feeling like themselves. They might have an attachment, maybe they don't make decisions in their highest good. Maybe they continue to suffer in addiction and can't figure out why they can't stay sober, or there might be some way of self-destructive patterning that isn't divine. So I can see if there's an entity stuck with somebody and help them to release it and let it be gone. So, and I've been doing that work ever since. So this toning works both in person and at a distance, over distance sessions. I've recently added to the work that I do at Liberate Hollywood, which is a wellness center in Hollywood, a way in which anyone can participate in a meditation that I teach that includes a part of this healing energy that I use on clients as a part of this meditation. And the meditation is called Grounding and Self-Healing for the Soul meditation. And it's Tuesdays at 6 p.m. You can find this on my Instagram Linktree link. So if you go to @_Travis Taylor, you can go to the Linktree link in the bio, and you can find the meditation link there. You can also go to liberatehollywood.com and go to the live stream events and find that. You don't have to be available at 6 p.m. Pacific, but you can participate within 24 hours of that live feed. So that's an opportunity wherever you are to participate in that type of healing. And what I do in that meditation is to do a guided meditation, grounding the person into their physical body, connecting with earth energy, and then connecting with their higher self and any spirit guides they might have. An animal spirit guide helper comes as well. And they're shown an aspect of their soul healing, and I basically do a journey where people collect a soul part on their own that's different than my own practice individually. So there's a lot of opportunity there if you're interested to participate. If you're interested in any of the work that I do, you can also tune in to my Instagram at 5:30 on Tuesdays. That's 5:30 Pacific on Tuesdays @_Travis Taylor. And I just offer up myself for any questions that you might have about your own journey. I'll even pull cards on occasion, or tune into someone energetically, do kind of a mini reading there. It's something that I wanted to provide a service back. And so if you follow me on Instagram @_Travis Taylor, you can then tune in at 5:30 on Tuesdays. And then there's other events that I've got that I'm promoting in the LA area. I'm teaching Reiki here at Liberate later on this month, a Reiki 2 class on February 23rd. If you're interested in that, I could essentially book you for a Reiki 1 before that if you're in the LA area and interested in going. I've got a Karma of Relationships workshop coming up as well this month. And so that's basically it as far as that. I think, my capacity in the work that I do is pretty specific in that I've been told that I'm quite direct, clear, concise, and helpful for people that have come to me. And when I just lost my train of thought. So if you're interested in learning more about the work that I do or booking a session, you can go to my events page. You can go to the sessions page on divineinsight.com and find out more information about the different modalities that I use, and you can book a session right there. I work, I'm in Pacific time, but there's a booking feature where you can, wherever you are, whatever time frame you're in, you can book it online right there in half-hour or hour-long increments. So you can also shoot me an email if there's anything that I've talked about that you want to learn more about, or you're interested but not sure. If you have any questions about what the healing process is like or anything, then please let me know. I found my train of thought just now. So one of the things that I find that I can do really well is I really help people with the specific way in which they're trying to access their intuition in this life. Like, because of my ability to see in all of these different realms, I know exactly what the person needs to do to access their intuition and develop this conscious relationship with the world around them. I can help people with eliminating, any karmic issue that is coming up for them, or identifying if they have any karmic issues, which we all sort of have cause and effect related karma. But I talk about karma a lot because I think it's important to stay in my own lane when it comes to my karma and not project karma onto other people. One, I don't really have the ability to do that, so I really need to just stop trying. But it also takes away my responsibility for taking action in the moment when I need to take action, to say, oh, that's just karma, that's their karma. Something will happen and they'll pay for it eventually. I wholeheartedly disagree with that mentality and belief system around karma. But it's a story for another day. With that, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really grateful for your time, your interest in watching or listening, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much. You've been watching or listening to the Divine Insight Show.